So here we all are again. It is absolutely sweltering up here today. It must be 90 degrees. I reckon I've got all the windows open. There's absolutely no air whatsoever up here. It's Bank Holiday Friday. You probably won't get this today because it's Bank Holiday really, and I've been spending a lot more time with you lot than I have with my family. So I'm going to film today and I'm going to edit tomorrow, and hopefully it'll be out over the weekend sometime. So that's when you'll be seeing me. Right, firstly, chicks. I've been getting a few messages, how did the sickly chick do? Unfortunately, sickly chick didn't do very well at all. But apparently that's not uncommon for one of them not to make it, so that one died, unfortunately. But the others are coming on leaps and bounds. They're lovely little fluffy things. I'll show you a video in a minute. We moved we had an old run out the back from one of the various animals we've had, rabbits or the chickens originally or whatever. We resurrected that, got the nail gun out and the stapler. We put that out in the sun, so they're actually, rather than being in the garage below me, they're now out in the sun and they're loving it. One managed to escape through a tiny little hole this morning. I see it running around on the lawn, so I hoofed it back in and pinned all the wire back down so they can't get out, nothing can get in, so they're perfectly safe. Just looking forward to their first egg. I don't know how long that takes. How long does it take for a little tiny chick to... I mean, they're about the size of an egg at the moment, but it can't be too long. Anyway, what else have we got to say before we start? Oh, anybody that's thinking of messaging and saying, Laney, your T-shirt's on inside out, I get it every time I wear this T-shirt. It's one of the thinnest ones I've got, and I put it on because it's so hot here. It's supposed to be like this. Look, the buttons are on the outside. It's just that for some reason the print is on the inside. I have no idea what that's all about. Somebody in marketing somewhere probably thought it was a good idea at some stage. But anyway, enough of the waffling. I've got a few things to say at the end, actually. I've got a little plan, but I'll leave that till the end. So where were we? Where did I leave you? Route nightmare. Although it seemed like forever, and still does looking back, that me and Tench Bloke was set up in that Douglas Lane car park in the route and the little route. It was only a couple of weeks, I suppose, maybe a little bit, maybe 3, I don't know, but let's say a couple of weeks. But they were a great couple of weeks. I mean, apart from TV's captures, it became a focal point. You know, anyone that came in the gate to fish would come straight over. We had a proper little encampment there. We'd built like a fire pit. We dragged loads of stones out the margins and made a circle, and that's, you know, we was forever collecting wood from Dutch bloke's stash that he'd chopped down everything in sight. Making big fires there. People would come around in the evening and sit and have a beer and a curry, and you know, it was a very, very sociable place. I remember one particular night. Must have been just after Tench Bloke caught the fish, because he'd been and got his photos developed, and they were in the glove compartment of his little van. And someone, I think it was Shaky Dell, said, "Oh, you got any pictures of the fish?" And he went, "Yeah, they're in the glove compartment." Help yourself. So he's trotted over there, and we're all still sat there chatting, a few of us, and suddenly Tench Bloke's just drained of colour. "Oh shit!" You went, "No!" and run across to the van. Now, obviously, there were some personal photos in the folder. I don't think Shaky Dell's ever been the same from that day onwards. I'm not going to go into... I didn't see, so I'm not saying, not my place to say. But let's just say Tench Bloke was suitably embarrassed that somebody else had got to see these personal photos. But that was always the way, wasn't it? With, you know, if you remember back to the days of prints, if you wanted your prints normal, you just go and drop them off in Photo Quickie, whatever the shops were called back then, and you know, a week later they'd be automatically processed and your name would be on them and you'd pick them up. If you wanted them quicker, like we all did, if you had a result you wanted them there and then, you'd put them in the hour print. Now the hour print used to do them manually, a big machine, but the girl, you know, worked behind the counter, would put them in and check them as they all came through, make sure that they looked right, they were printed right, and then put them in an envelope, and then you'd come back in an hour later with your little ticket. She'd give you your photos. And it was always the crack. If you could get your mate's camera at any stage, at any time, when he wasn't looking, and take some photos, knowing that he was going to do the quick hour. I mean, anything, you know, a close-up of your left bollock, somebody's hairy bum, whatever, you knew that the girl would see these photos, and the girl, you know, would be looking at the person coming and picking them up. having seen all these photos, and they wouldn't know why they were being stared at like they were some sort of weirdo until they got back to the lake and opened the photo, and they were like, "Oh, you bastards!" But that was always the crack. That's what we did, you know, anything for a laugh. So after the route, end of the route, sort of long session, the fish were noticeably out in the middle, like so, further out from the route, and the only places you could really get to that was from Bryant's Point and Mary's Point, which was right at the other end of this big section of water with the Anthill Island and a little dot island. So it's got two small islands at the far end of it. Now Mary's Point used to fish up in a gap between these two islands, and there was a shallow bar, and that was a good spot. But behind this island, which was too far from the route and not possible from Bryant's Point because you'd have to bend around the island, there were a series of bars out there, a lot more shallower features than the main body of water. I mean, they had bars, but the bars would be 11 foot deep in 16-foot water, for example. You know? Whereas round the back of the island, more towards the sailing club really, the sailing club would have been the perfect swim. You know, from the sailing club area, you could have fished out onto these bars, which some of them were 5 foot, in 10 foot water. They were all sorts, you know. You go over them in the boat and you'd see them just sliding away into the depths. It looked absolutely perfect out there. So I decided I was going to make a swim that would get me to these magical bars that didn't get fish from anywhere on the lake. Now, if you imagine you've got this big peninsula with a sailing club on it, and that's all fenced off. You can't, you know, big fences, barbed wire across the top, big locked metal gates. So that was the only bit we couldn't get to. But as you come round the sailing club peninsula towards the Dredger Bay, the lake comes into a small, very narrow channel, the first channel into the Dredger Bay. So I made a little swim, or a little slot, right up against the sailing club fence. Now the sailing club fence came across their land, and then they had another panel going down into the water to stop you swinging yourself around there, and that was all barbed wire topped. So that went out, say 6 foot into the lake on a slope, and then you've got this 6 foot high fence there. And now what I wanted to do was to fish round the fence, out the last bit of the channel was only a few rod lengths, and then out in front of the sailing club. It was a bit of a tricky proposition, but I knew I could do it. So the first time I fished in there, I thought I'd try it, and I wove my bank sticks into the fence with the alarms over the top and had them up beachcaster style, and the boat tied up in the margin. So if I hooked one, the plan was to sort of keep the line clear of the barbed wire, get in the boat. So I fished a session like that. It was all a bit awkward, and I thought, this is, you know, if it goes off in the middle of the night, it's going to be a disaster, absolute disaster. So one day I decided what I'd do is I'd go out and collect up loads of bits of wood and build myself a little jetty. So the jetty had to go as far as the end of this extra panel in the water, and then I could fish the rods on a normal level, sideways to my little gap, lines going straight up the channel and out into the wonderland out there. So I got in the boat, went paddling about, and I actually found a couple of three of the original railway sleepers that, when Bigfoot had reversed his truck into the lake, that we'd set free and they'd gone. I found a couple of them in the North Lake, right under the bushes, hitched them to the back of the boat, rowed them round there. Bear in mind, we didn't have engines or anything, it was all paddling at this stage. So I paddled these bits of sleeper round there, and gone off around the lake looking for bits and pieces, and I actually found a platform, you know, like a jetty. It wasn't very big, but just sort of, I don't know, 5 foot by whatever they are, 2.5 foot, a perfect jetty. Needed a bit of repairing. So I've done the bit with the sleepers, I've got scaffold poles, I've got the sledgehammer. I think I've got a lot of the materials that were still, at this stage, still stashed over in the Rocky Barge. We still haven't got around to building that. So I've got all this stuff around there and the tools and that, and I've made this slightly wobbly but serviceable platform. So I could tie the boat to the end of it, I could have the rods on it, and I could take them right out there and you know, take the rods out there and just looking down through the crystal clear water and put them on the edge of these lovely sandy slopes. And you always saw fish out there. Every time you went out there, there was fish milling about. Lots of them with the stockies. But you see the odd proper one come through. So this was my plan. And I just thought, well, it's like virgin territory out there. Again, how can you fail? Around this time as well, we were getting big problems. I said about in the Dredger Bay when I had my rigs moved. We were getting that a lot now, and a lot of it was the stockies, these little commons. They seem to be really good at not getting hooked, even on Tench Bloke's fly hook rig. We were using bigger leads. We were using those big clock leads, they call them. They're like a circle with a hole in the middle, like a big polo. 5 ounce, I think they are, with studs all over them, just to try and get them to stay on top of these little plateaus and bars. Because quite often you'd go out there to check the next day and all your bait had been done. Every single scrap of bait had gone. So you'd go back, snag the line and follow the line, and before it got to where you'd left your rig, it'd bend off and your rig would be down there in the weed. Whether they were doing it across the line with their bodies, whether they were actually picking it up and dropping it, I don't know, but they were getting away with it big style, you know. So if better fish came in, there was no rig there. There was nothing there, you know. They were doing trashing a lot, and the big fish were capable of this as well. I'd seen it lots of times. So we came up with a few different methods. The first was these clock leads, but the second and most successful method of the lot, Jacko actually suggested he'd used it on another big pit he'd fished in the past, and that was the running rock rig. So basically what you've got your main line going down to a swivel and then your rig. On the line above your swivel you've got a bead, a normal running rig, but instead of a lead you have another swivel in place of the lead which runs up and down. Tied to the swivel you have some very light line, like I don't know, say 4 pound line, and that's tied to an elastic band. And the elastic band, you have to find the proper rock for it. You want a flat rock, say about yay big, flat, weighing quite a lot, you know. I don't know, doesn't matter what it weighs, doesn't matter if it weighs 10, 12 ounces. And you wrap the elastic band around it. Obviously you can't cast this, you have to go out there with it really carefully in the boat, find your spot, and then sort of put your hand underwater and release this flat rock. Because it's flat, it doesn't plummet to the bottom, it sort of wavers all the way down and donk settles on the bottom. So now you're fishing with a massive, great big rock as you wait. Because it's running, you can get a bite, and as soon as you tighten down to a fish, or even the rock, if you bounce the tip, the elastic band stretches, bounces, and the rock falls out. If for some reason the rock doesn't fall out, you've only got this piece of like 3 or 4 pound line, which will snap. We used to put overhand loop knots in it as well, which weakens it. So you were never going to have a problem with a fish and a rock on the end, but it used to guarantee your rig would stay out there, you know, for time immemorial if you left it out there. So this is what I employed from this fence swim, fishing out there, running rocks on these plateaus. But it was a nightmare. I went out there one morning and had a look, and I could see fish out there, I could see a lot of activity. I thought I should have had a bite by now. And I've gone out there, rode out there, got the mask on, stuck my head over the side where I knew my rig was. And I could see my line, going up across this little plateau. I could see the rock and I could see the rig. And there were 2 stockies down there, feeding like mad. They were about 12 pound commons. They were feeding like mad. They'd stripped all the bait off of one side of this little plateau, and their noses were up against the line. And they knew. They refused to feed on the other side of the line. They knew there was a trap there somewhere. You know, and these are really young, small fish. It's just bizarre to see. They were right underneath me. They didn't spook from me, but they refused to go the other side. There was all bait the other side of my line, and my rig was part of that. But they wouldn't cross that sort of danger line to get there. They were getting really cute, these stockies, and they were becoming a real pain in the arse. I must have done, I don't know, a good couple of weeks, not solid, but mainly in this swim, determined that I was going to catch one out there. There was absolutely no reason why not to, but I just could not get a bite from this fence swim. So I started trying on the opposite side on Mary's Point, which couldn't get to the shallow bars, but like I said, it had this beautiful feature there. It had a small island to the left with a gravel like bib underwater, about 5 or 6 foot deep, and that was Mary's Island, it was called, and that was Mary's table. yeah, because she'd been caught off of this spot there. Steve Alcott used to love it over there. And then you had the Anthill Island with the dot island to the left and the connecting bar. Now, when you saw the connecting bar, it was probably 2.5 foot deep on top. You could get out on it. I know you used to do regularly. You could row out there and just get out of the boat and stand on the bar. And if you look down the far side of the bar, it was quite steep, but you could see it going down through the crystal clear water. You could just see it going down and down and down and down until it got too dark to see down the bottom. It was really deep down the bottom. And the fish used to love it on the back of this bar. And if you sprinkled bait all down there, you'd come back and you'd see big patches of it missing, or it had been stripped out. The top of it was the ideal place, but the top of it was stocky central, and the bigger fish seemed to be down the bottom. And quite a few of the lads fish. I mean, I Jacko fished it a bit with the running rock because that was ideal because it wouldn't tumble down the hill. And Steve used to fish it a lot, and I did a bit out there. Funny enough, in the end, after a few months of this, of everybody having a go, if you went out there with a mask and looked down the bottom of the bar, you could see all these flat rocks, some with elastic bands still around them where the line had broken, and others that obviously had been used in the elastic band and fallen out. It was like a big cluster of them down the bottom. But I had one bite from there within about 2 minutes of putting the rod out. I had an absolute belt on. This was off the highest spot on the bar. Hooked a fish, a proper one, not stocky, and lost it straight away. Just plunged over the bar. I can't remember if it cut me off or whatever happened, but I lost this fish. And I went out and had a look, and I put tigers and hemp out there, and I put a lot of it out there. And there was one patch missing, exactly where my rig was. So this fish had come in, probably from the front, nailed the first bit with my rig in it. Must have been its first 2 mouthfuls. But that was my only bite off of this lovely little feature out there. I just couldn't get a bite, same as a fence. Just didn't seem to be my area, really, if you like. And it certainly became not my area one morning. I've told you about Phil and the secateurs, well, all of us and the secateurs, but Phil was secateur mad. Now, Mary's Point is a little tiny swim. It is tiny. And the back of it is all hawthorn bushes, big hawthorn bushes. So you're walking round from No Carp Bay across this sort of a lawn bit. And when it gets to this outward bend, that's where Mary's Point is. But it's just a wall of hawthorns with a little tiny hole cut in. And you go through the little tiny hole, only a rod length, and you come out on this little swim. Beautiful. Once you're in there, it's absolutely beautiful. And at this time, you used to be able to drive round as well, so you could have your car. You could actually put your car across the gap at the back. So no one you didn't want to could get in and out. Your gear was safe. It was heaven in there. But Phil had decided that it was getting a bit sharp. He was walking around in his carpet slippers and his shorts and that. And he was getting scratched up by the hawthorn because they've got them horrible big jaggy things on, haven't they? So he'd been pruning. Now, being the little hippie that I was, I used to spend a lot of time barefoot, most of the time barefoot. And I'd walked out of Mary's Point one morning when I was fishing in there. Phil had been round the day before. If you cut hawthorns, if you cut them right back, all the spikes go in different directions. So they're almost like tank traps, that you used to get in the war, those jaggy in every direction. I've come through there barefoot and I've trodden on one of these multi-pointed hawthorns, and it's gone under my little toe, right in the joint of my little toe. It's gone right in, hit the bone, and snapped off. I felt it crunch, and it snapped off. It turned out later, when I found out exactly what had happened, that it had done that. It had gone in, hit the bone, twisted over sideways, and snapped off inside. But at the time, I just thought I'd punctured myself, and I still had the bit of hawthorn, but I didn't realise one was missing. Anyway, discarded it, and over the next few days, 3 or 4 days or whatever, I got the worst infection in that foot. It was unbelievable, worse than the one I'd had way back on Burfield when I had the hole in my leg. My foot swelled up like a balloon. It was purple and green and pink and every colour you can imagine. And it was massive. You could put your finger in it and take your finger out of the swelling and you'd have a finger-shaped dent right in the top of my foot. And it was absolutely agony. I couldn't put any weight on it whatsoever. So eventually I went to doctors or outpatients, or whatever it is, A&E, something. I went somewhere. I can't remember where I went, but I went somewhere and showed it to them. And they said, whatever's happened, you've left it too late. you know, it's got a big infection in it, you're going to have to take some antibiotics, wait for the infection to go down, and then come back and we'll have a look. But we're quite confident that there's nothing in there. It must just be an infected hole. So I thought, fair enough. But as I put my foot down, you know, really gingerly, I could feel something scraping against the bone. I could feel this, you know, like a massive splinter every time. So I got back to the lake and sat and made some crutches out of, obviously, Wraysbury sticks. So I found one that sort of went up and split in two at 90 degrees and cut that bit off and cut that bit off and made sure it fitted under my arm. And there was a little bit on the side to hold on to, and I made this Wraysbury crutch. But as a result, I couldn't really walk around, I couldn't walk, so I couldn't walk around the lake at all. And I had another in my long succession of inflatable boats at this time. It was a little yellow one, I believe, and it was tiny, this little inflatable boat. But it came in such, you know, it was so handy at this stage, because what I was doing, I was going everywhere by inflatable. And I just lay down with my belly in the inflatable and my face hanging over the front with my little diving mask on, and I'd just swim everywhere. I was just swimming. Or, you know, if I wanted to go down the route to see someone, I'd paddle down there. If I wanted to go up Carp Bay, I'd paddle up there. Everywhere I went was paddling in this little dinghy with Fat Sam sitting behind me. She loved it. She loved boats. Absolutely loved boats. So yeah, I just paddled about. But the upshot of this was I got to know the bottom of Wraysbury like the back of my hand. You know, I just got to know every single nook and cranny, every single part of it, every bar, what bar led to what plateau. You know, I didn't have to look up to see where I was. If I was looking down, I knew exactly where on the lake I was by what I was seeing through the mask. And that was obviously information that was invaluable to me. If we've just gone dark a couple of minutes ago, or dim, and now we've gone lighter, I just realised that one of my spotlights has gone over there, needs yet more batteries. I'm building a barrage, like a wall of dead batteries behind the camera. There's all sorts, PP3s from this thing, and the one up there, batteries from there. I've only got one plug-in light, so there's only one actually running on electric. So I've just changed the camera and it might come a bit brighter, so don't think you're going mad. It's just I am. So yeah, fish are out in this area. They're still out in this area. There's not a lot being caught. It's hot, you know, it's midsummer. Fish just cruising about. Can be quite tricky on any lake, you know, when it's like that, but especially on a big lake, if you bother them, they just go. You just see backs going off to another area, spend a week over there, or a couple of days over there, or whatever. So I was, like I say, I knew the bottom of the lake well, chasing these fish about all over the place, but every time I went across the main section, so in front of Bryant's Point, which is the biggest lump of water, but very deep. But every time I went over that with the mask, like paddling about, I'd bait. There were 2 bars out there, and I think from the swim they were approximately sort of 80 and 120 yards. But you could also fish them. There's an end of the second bar, so a third spot which you could fish from the Route Nightmare. But from there it was quite a long way, maybe 150 yards. I'd upgraded the reels by now, I think, from me little 55s. I had one of the early bait runners, I believe. So I was baiting these 3 spots, so 2 that I could fish from Bryant's and 1 I could fish from the Route. But the one from the Route was a beautiful, beautiful spot. Just looked bang on, you know, had all the sand and the little white stones, and I'd been pumping it in there. So after a while, I thought I'm just going to go. Tench bloke had stopped fishing the Route by now. I'm going to go and fish in the Route. Nice bit of comfort out the back of the motor. Let my bad foot get better. And I'm going to fish this long bar. So I went out there and marked it, rather than with the old little Kinder Egg shells. I'd got some white pieces of just basic polystyrene, and wrapped them up with line and lowered it down there. And I'd made some sort of a clip on the side, probably a bit of Wraysbury stick in the side of this foam, so I could clip them up just under the water, so no one else would be able to see them. But if I rode out, you know, especially if I stood up, you'd see this big white square just under the surface, and I'd know that was where the feature was. So if I did it at night or whatever, for example, I could go straight past and hoof a load of bait out there. And I'd been fishing in there. I'd been in there about 2 or 3 days, something like that. Tench bloke was right down the bottom in Carp Bay. Neither of us had caught anything. So I decided I was going to have a night down there just for the social, because it was a long way, to wander around, especially to either leave your gear. Well, in either of those spots weren't what you call safe spots to leave your gear. So I threw all my stuff in the boat, and I've gone up to see Tench Bloke. I'd got the shootist boat. I should have had this at this stage. When I was in the route, I'd borrowed his boat, because the inflatable, out of that range, if the wind got up, it weren't the one really. So I borrowed the shootist boat, put all my gear in there, and rowed up there. And on the way, I stopped at my little polystyrene marker, and I unclipped it, and I let it up to the surface and clipped it back up, and I put a whole bucket of particles over the spot. Now my plan was the next morning to row back from No Carp Bay, and on my way past, the marker would be very, very visible. I was just going to donk straight on top of the bait and into the route, so save going in and out. I'd saved myself a 150-yard journey twice. That was my plan. So we got into No Carp Bay. TB's got a fire going, we've got a few beers. I walked up the offie, got a few more. The normal Wraysbury social. We was having a laugh and what have you. Like sort of late evening, and we've seen a pair of headlights come in to the Douglas Lane car park. It's a long way away, but you can see these headlights. They've shone, and as whoever it is has turned, they've gone right across the lake. So someone's obviously just turning up. And we've watched them, and they've bumped across the little field and stopped in the Route Nightmare. And I was like, oh, God, someone's going to go in there. I know they are. Sure enough, you see the interior light come on, then you see a head torch flashing about, and enough sort of torchage. It's a good word, isn't it? Torchage. Might have made that one up. Enough torchage in the swim to know that's where they were setting up. They weren't just loading their barrel or whatever. They were setting up in there. Anyway, thought nothing else of it. I was a bit gutted, because my plan was to go in there the next morning. Anyway, we carried on, having a laugh, joke and whatever. It couldn't have been more than an hour and a half later. Plum blokes walked round, appeared in the swim. He's gone, I've had one. We're like, what? He said, is that you in the route? He said, yeah. He said, unbelievable. He said, I just turned up. He said, I went out there. It was too dark to see, because he'd got a couple of spots that he wanted to go on. He said, I couldn't find any of my spots. He said, and I see a big white marker on the surface, and thought, that's got to be next to something. He said, I just chucked it down next to that and came back. He said, about 10 minutes later, I had a run. He said, I've got a bloody great mirror in the sack. I was just like, no, no. He said, I think it's olive. I thought, oh my God, if it is the elusive olive, I am going to be destroyed. All my own fault. But I thought, I am going to be destroyed. That is just going to be savage. So anyway, we went back round with him. I think we said sack it up and we'll come round in the morning. I think that was the crack. So anyway, at some stage we went back round to the route to have a look, and he's pulled out his fish, and it's a big fish. In the sack you can see it's a bloody great big fish. As soon as he's opened the sack, I've seen two things. Yeah, I've seen the cluster of scales on the top of its back, so I know it's cluster straight away. And I've seen a sack full of my particle where it's shit it out. Yeah, it's been bang on my bait, and the sack's just full of bits of my bait. Just no, but I'd already caught cluster, so it wasn't as devastating as if it had been olive. But we weighed it, and it was over 39 pounds. I think it was 39.8 or 39.12 or something, which is enormous for this fish. It'd obviously been bang on the bait, and Plum Bloke was made up. But I knew then straight away, I thought, I'm not getting this swim again. Tench Bloke's had a good result in there. It went quiet for a little while. I've managed to bait it. I've managed to get back in there. Now Plum Bloke's had that. It's going to be a popular swim. So I knew I had to relocate. It was just a case of where to, because I knew these fish were out there. But I also knew, which no one else knew, that I'd been baiting these two bars off of the Douglas Lane Point. So, my next sort of plan of attack had to be there really, didn't it? The session I decided to start in the Douglas Lane Point, I must have been insane. I must have been. The weather, like we're talking about, we're fishing, like I said, 120 yards or whatever, in a rowing boat, which you're paddling, like I said, no engine. Used to get battered anyway, this big old fiberglass or wooden boat or whatever it was, get battered by the wind. But I set up in there, and there was, what would that have been coming that way? Southerly or westerly, massive wind. And we're talking white caps coming from right up in No Carp Bay, down past Mary's Point, charging through this centre section of lake, proper big waves coming through and crashing straight down into sort of the Douglas Lane area and the point at the end. But I thought, I'm going to put my plan in operation. You know, no one had fished that point for quite a while. I knew I'd baited it regularly. I knew roughly, I didn't have markers out, but I knew roughly where the bars were. You know, if I stuck my head under, I'd know exactly where the bars were. The problem with sticking your head under in a big wind is the boat's giving it this, up and down, up and down. So your head's under and then your head's out, and then your head's under and then your head's out. And every time your head goes under, of course the boat's up at a stupid angle. The waves are coming in, so the front of the boat's getting heavier where you're kneeling. I used to have a gas life jacket, but I also had a solid foam one of them buoyancy aids, and I used to roll that up and put that at the front as a knee rest because it was really uncomfortable on your knees. So I was right in the pointy bit at the front, and that would tip the boat right up in the air. So in the wind, it was a bit of a mission, to be honest. And what I used to do back then was leave the rod on the bank, take the lead, chuck the lead in my teeth and row out there. Because if you went out there with the rod in a big wind and dropped the rig, you'd blow off in a great big horrible direction, and by the time you got back you've got line all around the pond. So I put it on the clutch, or actually we didn't use the clutch, we used lolly sticks. I remember this, off of the tangle twisters. We used to save the tangle twister sticks, we used to have a joke written on them. We used to open the bail arm and put the lolly stick down the side of the sort of bail arm housing, and it used to sit tight against the spool like a line clip. So when you went out with the lead, you know, rowing with it in your teeth, it would go pink, 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 and it would only let off one rotation at a time, so it would keep the line nice and tight rather than it all blowing everywhere. You know, I got out there this morning. Absolute nightmare. I've gone way out to the left because of the wind. Stuck my head under, and I can see the bottom going past me, like when you look out the side of a car window when you're going down the motorway. There's weed and bars, and it's doing about, well, it looked like about 40 mile an hour. And I've got the rig halfway down. I'm waiting to drop it as I pass the spot. First pass, I've seen the spot. It's just gone, gone, gone out, gone again. Tighten the line up. Thing. It took hours. This was just for the 80-yard one. Eventually, as it's gone past, I've just dropped it in a close approximation and thrown a handful of boilies as I'm flying up the lake. And the 120-yard one was even worse because I was right out there in the middle of the wind. I was getting absolutely battered. But eventually I managed to get 2 rods out there near, as I say, on the spots, near enough on the spots. It was too rough to use the running rock rig because obviously in all that wave and swell you'd just be forever snapping it off. So I think I had quite big leads on. I think I had the clocks on, I'd say maybe 5 ounces or something, which was monstrously big for us back then. They were sea fishing leads, so plain silver sea fishing leads. So I've got these 2 rods out there. Got back in the swim. I was soaked. I was freezing. My arm was killing me. I've suffered a lot with, probably through stunts like that with tennis elbow in recent years, and I'm sure it's all of that one-handed rowing while the other one's got, you know, it's not like you can sit and row properly. You're over the front with one paddle, the other hand's busy with the rig and the bait and everything else. So it's a proper mission to keep straight. So I got all set up, probably built a little fire, clean clothes on, you know, got dried out, thought this is the one. I think I actually see a couple of fish out there. I probably saw that. Probably that's what made me go in there, despite the weather in the first place. But I remember being red hot confident that night of a bite, and being very, very surprised the next morning, first light, that I hadn't had a bite. And I was still sitting there by the rods. I thought, I'm not touching them. They can just stay out there. And I remember, because I've read it in my book, but I remember anyway because I'm mad about bite times. It's a big thing with me. 9 o'clock the next morning, one of them just ripped off. Here we go, this is better. The wind's still absolutely piling across. You know, you've got the rod in the air and the rod's getting pushed away in the wind. It's just like white caps coming up over your feet. And I'm playing this fish and it really wants to row. I think it was the 80-yard one. And it's fought and fought. I mean, properly fought. There's a lot of weed out there as well, and you've got a lot of debris coming through on the sort of tide, if you like. We're talking maybe half an hour to get this fish in. eventually I got him in, he started boiling up in the margins, in the waves and what have you, and he's gone in the net, and it's a big old fish. I'm like, yes, like, everything is suddenly worth it, isn't it? All that effort the day before, all that, because it's frustrating trying to do set your rigs and that in a massive wind on a massive pit. Suddenly it's all worthwhile. So I put it in the net and I look in there, it's malins. I'm like, how can it be malins? Yes, I wanted to catch malins, but I didn't want to keep catching malins. He's in the net, it wasn't that many weeks since Tench Blake had had it just over the way in the road. A beautiful fish, you can't, if you're going to double up on a fish, then, a fish like that is the sort to double up on, but what would that be? That's the third time I've had it now. When I joined the lake, I said that's the one I want to catch more than any other, but not quite that literally. Weighed him in. It's the same again, refusing to be a 40-pounder, 39, whatever, and a half, 3/4, didn't really matter, but just under 40 pounds. But I mean, obviously I was chuffed. I'd had a Wraysbury proper one, and like I've said a few times already, what Steve told us at the beginning it was turning out to be so correct, that the small amount of fish, Mary's gang were the feeders, they were the ones you were most likely to catch. But yeah, so I put him back and then spent, I don't know, hours getting the rod back out there, because it was still as bad as it was the day before. The other one, I thought, I'm just leaving that, nothing's happened to that one. I'm just leaving that where it is. So eventually, by mid-afternoon, I'd got both rods out there, and obviously I'm well confident for 9 o'clock next morning. Now I'm thinking that's bite time, that's when it's going to happen. Right, just briefly, I was aware there, looking at the screen, that everything had gone really bright again. I'm having a nightmare today with the light, so if you are watching this rather than listening to it, and the light's going up and down, then I apologise, but I'm not filming it all again, so you just have to poke up with it. And if you can hear matey next door in his lawnmower, you'll have to get used to that as well, because once he starts, he don't stop. So there I was, settled in for the night, waiting for 9 o'clock next morning, and like clockwork, bang on 9 o'clock the next morning, the rod that's been out there since minute one, the 120-yard one, that's torn off, like proper torn off. So I've hooked into this fish, and it's just, even at that range, in those conditions, in that big wind and everything, it's flat rodded me. And I'm using nylon. There's a lot of stretch in 120 yards of nylon. This was before I realised braid was as good as it is. But it's still just flat rodded me, and it's going and it's going and it's going, and I can feel it smashing through weed and what have you. And I'm thinking, I am going to have to go out in the boat. And sure enough, eventually it's come solid out there, And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, I really don't fancy this. The swell's going up and down. It hasn't abated at all in the whole time I've been there. I think I have got to go out in the boat. I can't just leave him out there. There's no one else on the lake. No one else about that I could see, or hollow or whatever. So luckily, like I say, I had the shooters boat, which is a lot sturdier than an inflatable. I probably wouldn't have done it in the inflatable. Well, I might, but that's not a bit near that. I didn't have to. I had the shooters boat. So I've got Fat Sam, put a lead on her and tied her to a tree, because she was a nightmare for swimming out there. If I was out in a boat and I was out in the boat too long, she'd think, oh, something must be up. And she'd done it before. She swam 100 yards out into the North Lake one day, because I'd had my head under the pond for so long with a mask and a snorkel. She must have thought something was up. I was drowning or whatever. And I remember all I heard, like through the snorkel or wherever your hearing comes from when your head's under a lake, was this splash, 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 splash. I thought, what is that? And I've looked up, and she's right by the boat. She's swum out from, I don't know, the Rocky Barge or whatever, right out to the middle, 100 yards. And I've had to drag her and pull her into the boat, all bedraggled. I felt sort of, I don't want to tell her off, because I felt sorry for her. She's done what she thinks is the right thing. She's trying to be Lassie. She's gone out there to rescue me, but I didn't want that happening, like sort of out in this big swell. That was proper dangerous. Might never see her again. Actually, I just had a thought. I'm going to go off on a tangent here. I just had a thought. Thinking about dogs and boats. Jacko had a dog. I believe it was Coral. He had various sort of rescue dogs. He had big greyhounds and these boxers. And he lives in a little house, and quite often he'd have 2 or 3 on the go at once or whatever. And I'm pretty sure it was Coral, who was a brindle boxer. And he was fishing on the North Lake once in the Turfs, we used to call it. It was right by the NatWest Sailing Club. I'm pretty sure it was there, but it doesn't really matter. And his dog loved boats as well. And he'd gone to bed, Coral had gone to bed. He's got his bivvy here, his rod's there, his boat there. And in the morning he'd woken up and his dog had gone. Obviously, full panic set in. And there's quite a long story involved in this, which is Jacko's story, so I won't try and emulate it. But the long and the short of it was, Coral had got up way before he'd got up and decided to get in the boat and sit in the boat ready. The boat was on the slope, Coral had got in the boat, and the boat had launched itself out into the middle of the lake. And when he finally sussed out what was happening, Coral's out in the middle of the North Lake paddling around in a boat on her own, and he's stuck on the bank thinking, how the hell do I get my dog back? But that's dogs and boats. Dogs absolutely love boats. All 3 of my dogs have loved getting in the boat, and that is getting louder and louder. You must be able to hear that by now out there. Sounds like you've got a tractor on the go. I'm going to pause for a minute. I will be back. I'm just going to go and I'll be back. Right, that's him shot. Silence. One big bang and it's all over, eh? I am only joking, by the way. 2. So where was I? Fat Sam tied to the tree. Big windy lake. Fish on the end. So I've got in the boat, put on the gas jacket, knelt on the foamy jacket, trying to wind my way out there, but it wasn't happening. I was just blowing sideways. So I'm sort of half winding, half rowing, half winding, trying to get into the wind, and the front of the boat's going up and going bosh. We're talking savage conditions here, proper savage conditions. So eventually, after a long while, I've got out and I've got over this fish, and the boat's going. I'm trying not to pull it because the boat's going up and down, and it's down in the weed and pulling and what have you, and then it's blowing round, and then suddenly you're back winding like mad because the boat's got the momentum in the wind. So you have to put the rod down, like proper dig in with both hands, and then pick the rod up and wind up the slack, drop it and row. And as soon as you stop, you're going backwards, and it just went on and on and on. It was a nightmare. I'd got over it a couple of times. I got it out of the weed a couple of times to the point where it was, I could see the fish just about because it was proper choppy. But every time I picked up the landing net, that's like a sail. So as soon as the landing net comes up, whoa, you're away backwards, the reel's spinning, and it's just, after about, I don't know, an hour of this or whatever, I was absolutely exhausted. I was soaked, the boat's full of water. And there's a great big pink buoy off to the right. So I let out some line, I went to the pink buoy and tied off to the pink buoy and just like sort of sat there. I was in bits. And I thought, I don't know how I'm going to land this fish. I've tried pulling it from the pink buoy when I was, but it wouldn't come. It just kept dropping in the weed. Every time I got it out of the weed, in the weed. Then I've seen, out the corner of my eye, I've noticed something over in the Douglas Lane, and I've looked over, and it's another boat. It's an inflatable boat. Jacko's motor's there. He's turned up. He's probably been sat over there watching me for ages, thinking Doug's in proper trouble out there. So bless him. He's pumped up his boat, and how he rode in an inflatable, again, he's head into the wind from there. He's rode right across 200 yards, 250 yards or whatever, probably more, into the wind and got up against me on the side of this pink buoy. He said, come give you a hand, Doug. So I think, fuck that, mate. Thank you so much. So we've lashed the 2 boats together, and carefully he's got out of his little inflatable into the rowing boat with his tied to the back of it or the side of it. Then we've gone back out after the fish, but now I've got someone who can just row. Yeah, he can sit at the front and row and row and row and row. We're not going anywhere. We're not going forwards, but we're not going backwards. So once we got over the fish, I'm like, paddle like a bugger, and giving it all this, and we're just about stopping in one spot, bouncing up and down. Got the fish up out of the weed, and this time I'm not going backwards. So I've just tightened straight down on it, pushed the net as low as I can to the water so that it doesn't act like a sail. He's come up the fish and he's gone in. It was just like, against all odds, it was. Without Jacko, there's no way I'd have landed that fish. Gone in, as it's gone into the net, as it's gone over the cord, I've looked and I thought, oh, it's Mary's mate. You know, I'd say if you're going to double up on something like Mary's Mate, fair play. But I caught Mary's Mate. I'd caught Malins. I just wanted to catch an odd, you know. The sight of a 25-pounder rather than an upper 30 at this stage would have been so exciting because they're the rare ones. Or the pug, you know. Surely I was due to catch the pug bloody thing. But no, it was Mary's Mate. It was a very, very similar weight again to the other one and to the last capture, just under 40 pound. So in 2 days I'd caught Malins, 39 whatever, Mary's Mate, 39 whatever. Yeah, it was a result, but it wasn't the result that I was after. The result I was after was something different. But we were warned right at the beginning, you know, the bulk of the captures, the small percentage of the fish, Mary's gang, they are the feeders, if you like. But yeah, I'd have traded them both in for a 25-pound odd, to be honest, something like measles or one of the other sort of ones that we used to see dotted about around the lake, because they were in there, you know, they just didn't come out very often. But I weren't moaning, you know, I'd had a touch against total adversity. I had battled Mother Nature, and to a degree I'd come out on top just about, with a couple of Wraysbury's finest, to be honest. Now, as far as I can remember, I think they were the last 2 fish I had that year. I might have had some stockies, but they're not quite as memorable as those big old Wraysbury mirrors or commons. We did fish on there for a while. I didn't do the winter on there. I'd planned to. I thought after, you know, having caught Mary in February, then it's worth doing the whole winter. And I think I did a little bit on there on Bryant's Point, but soon sort of realised that it weren't going to be the one. They're hard, those lakes, in the winter. They really are, unless you're bang on them, unless the conditions are right. You know, you've got a long period of the right weather, and they decide to feed. It can be soul destroying, really. So I know I didn't do the winter, but we were there late because I remember we had a Christmas party up the Percy. There was quite a few of us, not just from there, like some of the Horton lads. I know Phil was there, I know Shaky Dell was there, Mickey Gray, he was there, Mole Grip. There was, I don't know, we booked a table and a meal, so then I did have an old photo I've got a photo of Shaky, Phil and Mickey Gray at the bar, which I'll ping up. I did have a lovely photo of all of us, all sat round the table, all raising a glass and what have you. There were some right old characters in that photo, but I haven't seen that photo for years, to be honest. And I believe that was the night afterwards. We'd obviously all camped up in the Douglas Lane car park. We came out and we decided to walk the roadway, because going out the back way across the football pitch and round Brian's in the dark through the bushes, all drunk after a Christmas party, you know, the chances of everyone getting back were slim. I mean, there was people used to go missing on that route after the pub normally. Shaky Dell one night, for example, was a bit of a trailer behind coming across the football pitch, walked into a goalpost and knocked himself out. Woke up in the morning in the goal mouth thinking, where the hell am I? Everyone's like, what's happened to Dell? I don't know. He'll turn up. He's had some adventures, Shaky Dell. I've got some great stories about him, actually. But he was part of the one this night. We was walking along the sort of main road out of the village, and Douglas Lane's just on the left. And just before Douglas Lane, on that same side, is a house, or was a house, with a very big privet hedge with those archways cut for your little gate or your entrance. And it had 2. So it's got a side one and a main one. It's 2. So just a massive hedge. Of course, the drunker ones are leaning against the hedge, and Shaky's one of them. And he's like along the hedge, and he's gone along, and he's in front of us, and he just disappeared. Exit stage left, because obviously he's got to the gap and gone. Whew. We're all chuckling and laughing. We've taken a few more paces, and he's gone. Whew, come out of the second one. He must have just gone through, gone back on the hedge, scraped along the hedge until there was another hole, and just flown out. And somehow we've all made it back into the Douglas Lane car park and camped up, and had, you know, obviously had the roaring fire and the what have you. But I did briefly there mention that Shaky Dell's had a lot of experiences, and I'm going to tell a story before I go, because I'm getting so hot up here. But Dell told me this himself, so I know it's true, but I can't remember the exact details, but we're going to get it close enough. Dale, wherever he lives, somewhere sort of West Londonish, went out drinking, wherever it is, doesn't matter, let's say the pub. Come home, bit worse for wear. Now, I'm picturing in my mind that he lives in an area where you've got rows, streets, squares with houses similar, like a small estate or whatever. So anyway, he's come home, found the road, up the road, last house on the right, whatever it was. Found his house, gone round the back, gone in through the kitchen, gone upstairs, got undressed, or half undressed or whatever, pulled back the quilt to get into bed, and there's a very large black man in his bed. He screamed, the bloke screamed, the bloke saying, "Don't kill me," Dale saying, "What the bloody hell are you doing in my bed?" It's all kicked off. To which the bloke replied, "It's my bed, you're in my house." And what Dale could only surmise had happened is he'd gone to the equivalent house on the next block or the block after. So yes, the street looked like his, yes, the house was in the same place that his house was in, but it weren't in the right street. And he's trying to get in bed with this large black man. They just both freaked out. But, only those sort of things could only happen to Shaky Dale. I'm sure he's got a million other stories just like it. But anyway, that's enough waffling today. I'm going to tell you of my little plan. The other day I had a delivery of books, which included the last boxes of Flick of the Tail. So while we're on that subject, ping, up comes the ad. If you want books, the live link says website link just below where I am now. Click on that, you can do the business on there, you can buy books, whatever. If you're really feeling generous, you can buy me a pint as well, because it is hot. But anyway, on that pallet delivery or whatever, that lorry delivery of books were 3, I don't even know, it's never been opened, 3 that I didn't know existed. Should have prepared this really in the Blue Peter style, shouldn't I? 3 of these, which are the boxed, leather-bound copies of Fine Lines. They've all got numbered certificates and what have you. Quickly rip into this. So, all come in a hard wooden cupboard box. And inside you've got they're beautiful. They really are beautiful. You've got these totally leather-bound versions of the book with these raised spines, and I might do a close-up, ping that up as well, because you probably can't see that very well, of Fine Lines. And they all come with a certificate inside with the number. I think I did 50 copies originally, so it'll be something of 50. Now I've got 3 left that I didn't know I had. And what I've done in the past is I've raffled them. So I thought, while you're all here, what a good idea. Now rather than raffle them individually, and it get very complicated, I thought if we just do a raffle online through PayPal, and when we've covered a book, we make some more, and that goes to charity. But if enough of you get involved and it gets bigger, then we'll do 2 books. Or if everyone gets involved, we'll do all 3 books. And what I'll do is I'll cover the cost of the books, and then I'll run it on a little bit, and everything else, like I say, that we make can go to charity. Now, we'll have to decide what charity. Obviously, the main choice at the moment would be the NHS. I know they've got I think it's Charities Together, is it called? They've got a central organisation. So I'll say for now that would probably be choice 1. But I'll have a think about it. I'll look at how that works, where the money goes, and if any other smaller, health-based charities are being ignored because of it. Whatever, that's open to debate. But needless to say, you'll all be very generous, and there'll be plenty left over to give to a worthy cause. So that sounds fair enough to me. What we do is we do it on PayPal. To find my PayPal address, it's daveclane@btinternet.com, basically. But if you don't remember that straight away, if again you go onto my website link at the bottom, I think there's a contact tab, and that will have that email address that is linked to my PayPal. Now, to not confuse things, last time I done a raffle, it was £5 per entry. But we've got other things coming in at £5. People have helped with the making of this by it's to donate a beer button. But as I've explained to you, to be honest, £100 went on a hard drive the week before last. The battery, a lot of it's going towards producing this, to be honest. So £4. That way, my missus, who deals with all of that side of everything, the books and everything, can see which is raffle and which isn't without having to open every single one up. So what I was thinking was £4 a ticket. So £4 for one, £8 for two, 12, 16. Look at me doing maths. Right on their raffle. We'll know anyway. She will then take all the names that have come in multiples of £4 and put them all in a spreadsheet, and so they all get automatically allocated the number of the line it goes on. And we'll see how it goes. At the end of the day, there will be a raffle. At the end of the day, leather books will be the prize. If I can think of anything else that can go in. I was looking around there, I was going to say you can have what's left of the moonshine, but that's really not worth having. It's over there empty. Yeah, so if you're up for it, let's see how it goes. Yeah, we do a raffle, and hopefully we'll raise a bit of money along the way. £4 a ticket on PayPal, Dave C. Lane, btinternet.com. Everything else, you can see everything through the website, which is below. And I reckon before I pass out of heat exhaustion, that'll do. But like I say, I'm not going to edit this today. I am going to spend some time with the missus and kids in the garden. I'm going to edit it tomorrow, and you'll be seeing it then. So until then, stay safe. Ta-da.